Today's session follows an overview session I did a couple of weeks ago. A recording of that's on the DFE YouTube channel if you missed it, and you can go back and access that if you need to. As you'll be aware if you've been in our sessions before, please remain on mute as we go through, and if you have questions, please pop them in the chat and we'll endeavour to answer those at the end. We don't take questions from the group because it's too large, but if you write them in the chat, we'll pick them up at the end. Super. For those of you who don't know me then, my name's Adam Luke and I head up the School Attendance Policy and Strategy team at the DFE, and I'm joined this afternoon by Jane Ward, who is the Senior Education Welfare Manager at Bedford Borough Council. She's also the General Secretary of the Association of Education Welfare Management and the current Chair of the Network for Legal Intervention in Education. And I'm also joined by Vanessa Davies, who's the Education Welfare Service Lead, and Leslie O'Hagan, the Attendance Strategy Manager, both at Bristol City Council. And today I'm going to walk you through in more detail the expectations of the school attendance support team in the local authority around communications and advice to schools from September 2022. And then I'm going to hand over to colleagues who are joining me to talk about how they are currently meeting those expectations in their own local authorities. There was some understandable concern last time in the last session about what no doubt feels like a big increase in work for some of you. So part of the aim I would like to do this afternoon, and why I've invited Jane, Vanessa and Leslie along, is to illustrate what effective practice could look like and hopefully try and allay some of those fears and show you that it's more achievable than some of you felt. And that most of you, if not all of you, will be doing some or all of what Leslie and Vanessa and Jane are doing. And it's really important, I think, to underline the word illustrate in that, because as the new guidance makes really clear, all LAs will have the same components in their attendance survey, so that there's not unfairness between areas across the country, but the way that you deliver those and deliver against those expectations needs to be local to your context and needs to meet the needs of your residents that you're serving. So today isn't me saying that what happens in Bristol or what happens in Bedford is perfect or is the only way that you can do what you need to do, but it's about showing you some really good examples of colleagues who are doing that really well and are doing it already, and who don't need to make massive changes to the way that they do their advice and communications with local authorities. Super. So without further ado, I'll get started. As you hopefully know by now, we published new non-statutory guidance working together to improve school attendance at the beginning of May. It's new guidance that comes into force from September of 2022, and it sets for the first time a consistent list of expectations on attendance for schools. Governing bodies have maintained schools and academy trusts of academies and local authorities, and it marks a shift away from over-reliance on punitive approaches to a support-first model of attendance engagement. And it does so by developing a system that is designed to prevent patterns of absence from developing in the first place, by expecting schools to set clear expectations and promote good attendance regardless of where they are in the country. A system in which early intervention is the norm through better use of the data that the department will be providing to local authorities. Just so that you can use those, schools and local authorities can use those to spot patterns of absence before they become persistent, using what the data is showing you to help put better and more focused support in place as early as possible, so that barriers to attendance are removed. And finally, at the bottom there, that where absence does become persistent or severe, that there's better targeted, more joined up support to re-engage those pupils, regardless of which agency is leading. And as you know doubt know, my ministers have introduced a bill into Parliament that's currently making its way through the House of Lords, and should that bill pass in its current form, the guidance will become statutory, and those expectations will become statutory. Although I must stress that will be no sooner than September of 2023, so that there is time for schools, trusts and local authorities to transition. In terms of what the guidance means for local authorities, then, the previous webinar that we did gave an overview of the three main functions, the bullet points on the screen there, of the local authorities attendance service going forward. Today, we're focusing in on the first element, communication and advice, of the core offer that the LA support team will be expected to provide to all schools in its area free of charge. And that is, as I say, around communication, it's around advice, and it's around best practice sharing. And I'm going to, just before I hand over to colleagues, delve in a little bit more deeply on what the guidance says on communication and advice. So it goes without saying, and you don't need me to reiterate the point, that good communication and regular and effective sharing of good practice are essential to improving attendance, but also essential to good multi-agency working. And so if you look at paragraph 72 on page 27 of the new guidance, replicated on the next couple of slides, but it's in the guidance should you need it. It sets out in greater detail the four main areas that sit underneath this ask on communication and advice. And the first of those areas is about having clear guidance for schools. And the point of that clear guidance for schools is showing how the LA attendance support team will work with those schools, how you will draw on wider partners to support them and support families, and setting out as clearly as you can what work schools should have already done before they begin working with the local authority and the point at which you will become involved. And it's important to remember that the guidance is about working together. So it's about moving away from what we've had in the past, where school conduct a process and then the local authority conduct a process. It's about making that as joint as possible, but it's within that, and as you will see from the presentation from Jane in a short while, there are bits obviously that schools will need to have done and delivered before you get into stepping in from the LA's perspective. So the guidance is about making that as clear as possible. It's also about, and the last point on here sort of underlines this, it's about agreeing and setting out how you will work together. So not just the what of what each of you will do, but how you will share the responsibility for particular types of absence, particular cases, particular cohorts of pupils, in line with the summary table of responsibilities that was published alongside the guidance. The second area then is around single points of contacts. And as the guidance sets out, each school in the area, regardless of type, there was some confusion in the last webinar about whether that includes independent schools. There's no change to the previous situation. You will continue to work with independent schools in the way that you work with state-funded schools. So all schools, including independent schools, should have a clear point of contact in the attendance support team, and the relationship between those people are crucial, between your point of contact in the LA and the senior champion in the local in the school, are crucial to that ethos of working together that I've mentioned, and I really can't underline that enough. We're trying to move away from, as I say, the idea of having a process here and then a process there, to a world in which there's agreement and shared endeavour from the outset, particularly when those barriers to attendance go beyond the school gates. So the single point of contact, once they've been allocated, is expected to build a strong working relationship with the schools that they've been allocated, whether that is the pastoral and attendance staff in school if they've got them, or whether it's the senior champion on the school's leadership team that all schools will have from September. And the point of contact should be there to help and advise and support those leads, not do all of the work for them, not take on all of the cases or take on all of the blame or play good cop or bad cop, but work together with, advise, support those school level leads. And it's important to build as much trust as you possibly can. There were lots of questions in the first session about how do we get academies to work with us, what do we do if they don't want to work with us, etc. We're very much changing the mindset here, and we're going in and saying not oh, you've done this wrong. The LAC to say that you've done this wrong, we need you to follow this process, so on and so forth. We're spinning that round and we're saying, how can we work together and where can we work together to support these young people? And as people who've seen part of the schools bill will know, that includes a new duty on academies to collaborate with their local authority on various things, attendance being one of them. So we're moving towards a world in which that will be a statutory expectation of or a statutory duty of schools, including in academies and independent schools. But at the moment, you can point them to the guidance. We're thinking about where we can work together and what you've got to offer them, and you get a lot further in those conversations in that situation. I've been talking to two great leads from local authorities recently who had self-confessed very difficult relationships with a number of their trusts prior to the pandemic, and the shift in dynamic to being able to go in and say this is what we can offer and this is what we can help has massively changed those relationships for them. And if that's something that people would like more information on, we can look at how we can build that into some of the future training. Now, the guidance doesn't impose a requirement for that single point of contact to be allocated on a geographical basis. We're not trying to replicate, as you know, rebuild the old education welfare services of old. We're trying to build a new, more strategic thinking service. So there isn't a requirement that they're geographically grouped. I've been with the wonderful Wendy and some and her senior officer in Thurrock this morning, and they, for example, think that a geographical structure doesn't work for them. And I think that's fine. As I say, do it in the way that works best for your team, your local authority. But I think where you can, it's good to try and group them geographically, and so that workers have a bit of a patch, because there are connections to be made between schools and families with children at different schools in those areas, and you get to know the streets and get to know the people. But there's no prescription on that. If you need to allocate them in a different way, like colleagues in Thurrock are going to do, then that's fine. And as we'll hear in future webinars, those local authorities that have already moved to the system of having basically single points of contact in the attendance service again, they've often found that a geographical or ward level remit worked for them. So you'll hear from some of those in future webinars. And I will just point out that we've had a couple of questions in by email and such like over the last couple of weeks about whether we'll be able to share more on some of the local authorities who are already delivering much of the guidance. And the answer to that is yes, there'll be at future webinars. Some of them will be at future webinars, so you'll hear from them. And finally, we will come back to this in a future session, but in terms of the new targeting support meetings, and this is something I said to colleagues in Thurrock this morning, even if you don't map on geographically, trying to keep the single point of contact as the person who holds the targeting support meeting each term would be massively beneficial, because it gives you that opportunity to learn the context of the school, but also to build those strong relationships with the leads in schools. The third area under this expectation, and on a different note, is about effective practice sharing, which is one of the key LA responsibilities going forward. So there's an expectation in the guidance that the LA offers regular opportunities for schools to come together. You'll hear from Bristol and Bedford about how they're already doing some of that shortly, but it's not only to hear from the local authority, but to hear from other schools to talk about common issues, be those coding issues, be those more complex issues. They don't need to be resource heavy. There's no prescription of how you have to do them, and you'll hear it's very different in the two examples we've got today. They don't need to be physical. They could be virtual drop-ins, so on and so forth. It could be newsletters. There's lots of different ways that you might be able to do that, and I've seen loads of really effective practice on this when I've been out and about in the country. In terms of frequency, again, that should be determined locally, but the guidance sets a sort of minimum expectation of seeing those as termly, but you can do more if there's demand in your area. And finally, where possible, whether that's is a sort of event or whether it's a newsletter, useful where you can to include articles or speakers from other services. One of the things I was chatting to colleagues in Thurrock about this morning is how practically do you get to the rest of the LA to see this as their problem as well, and to be part of the solution to absence rather than it being an attendance issue over here. And part of that is getting them out there and hearing what people have got to say and getting schools familiar with some of those service leads. It helps cement those relationships and cement the endeavour, the sort of shared endeavour. I saw a great example of that when I was with colleagues in City of Leicester at the end of last year, and really helpful for schools. And then finally, the fourth area flows from the third, really, which is taking ownership as the local authority of the problems that you hear in those sessions where they're beyond what a school can do on its own. So if all of your schools in the area are suffering the same problem or witnessing the same sorts of barriers to attendance, what can you do at the local authority level that they can't necessarily do in and of themselves? And where would you doing something, whether it be a training session or joining up with another service or introducing a new protocol on a particular type of absence, where are the things that you can spot that they won't necessarily know is a shared absence issue that you can build on? And a great example of that I saw down in East Sussex was real problems with attendance in Hastings, and real problems with mobility of parents between schools because of different attendance expectations. So East Sussex County Council and schools came together and agreed a protocol for following up on absence, on use of fixed penalty notices for term time holidays, that sort of thing, to try and build a really good shared protocol across the town, within a tiny part of their local authority. That's really helped them to try and put some of those things in. And with that, you hear enough of me, so I will stop there and I will hand over. But as I said, if there are questions specifically on my areas, please do pop them in the chat and we'll come back to them at the end. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Jane.
Thank you, Adam. I've got to apologise because I'm a bit croaky today, so sorry about that. Yes, Bedford Borough. For those that don't know, Bedfordshire was split into 3 unitary authorities in 2009. Bedford Borough occupies the north of what used to be the county. We have the market town of Bedford and then a area of rural primary schools. So we're sort of large town, a corridor leading to Milton Keynes, a corridor leading to Cambridge, and the A1 going north-south. We have a main train line going through the town, and all the issues that those currently bring. County lines, drugs, gangs, the works. We have it all. We have, we currently working with 79 schools. It'll go to 88 in September when we're working with 88 now, because if the independent schools ring me up, and I don't have to stand up, I'm free. If I have to stand up, they're on a charge, and go to a meeting. That's how we've worked it for a very long time, and they've been very happy with that relationship. They're going to be even happier with the new one. So that's how we are at the moment. We've got 32,000 pupils. So it's going to be a task because there's only 3 of us at the moment. We are in negotiations, shall we say, with very senior leadership in the hopes that that will increase. From September, we are hoping that we can start with the new working together to improve school attendance. A lot of it we are still and have been doing since 2010. All our schools have an allocated education welfare officer. Their phones are on. We don't have electronic forms that I believe place a barrier. I think if If a head teacher or the attendance lead can just get on the phone or email a person they have a relationship with, things get sorted out so much quicker for the benefit of the child. And that's what we're all here for. So I think that is absolutely key, that the mobile phone and Teams are going to get used so much in this. I think the termly, what we are currently calling register checks that we're doing electronically, I think will be benefit from going back to face in schools. We've already had a discussion in Bedford about this, and the schools are relishing the challenge. They really cannot wait for it to go back to how it used to be. The EWO turning up, sitting down and having the chat. Somebody who knows them, knows the area, knows the families, in my case, the grandparents, is all really, really important to support schools. And that's why I believe that the single point of contact with a telephone number and not a form on a website is so important. We are currently rewriting or applying our children's services thresholds, revisiting them, revamping them, and applying them to the working together document. We are embedding in those children's services thresholds the working together to improve school attendance from September as well. The phraseology around severe absenteeism, persistent absenteeism, those levels, and what that looks like for anybody working in children's services, so they know at the first point, this is the threshold document. Oh, right, this is what we should be working with. I think the communication across the whole of the children's services is really, really important. And it's about getting the message out. And I think if you can start with the thresholds, and then you'll see in a few minutes that I've got a really simple school attendance is everybody's responsibility leaflet. That's already gone out to everybody who works in children's services. It's going through our reprographics publishing department at the moment to be certainly poshed up, because my IT skills are a trifle basic, as you will see in a minute. And so that everybody knows where we're working from. So I think the next slide, Adam, please. And here is the school attendance is everybody's responsibility. Now, I cannot claim full credit for this. I have to say credit to Ed McGee in Camden. I was talking to Ed a few months ago about a licensing issue, and he told me that he developed a very similar leaflet, and I said, oh, could I borrow that, because I'm trying to do something to that effect. And so I have to say that this is the Bedford Borough version of the Camden version. And it really sets out on this front page here, each person that comes into contact with anybody to do with school attendance, what they have to do, what they have to look for, and what their responsibility is. And the young person being right at the front of it, I think, is key, because for me, we never take the spotlight off the young person. It's their entitlement to an education, and that's what we're here for. But sometimes young people think that they can walk into school, tell somebody they're there, and then just doss about for the rest of the day. So you will see that item 4 on that list for the young person is engage in learning, and that's what I expect them to do. As we go through the process of communication and how we work in Bedford, you will see that quite often we are holding meetings that are holding the parent to account. And it never ceases to amaze me that I get to a police and criminal evidence interview in school. The young person sat there looking pretty glum and fed up, and nobody's asked the young person what's going on for them. So I'm hoping that after September that never happens. Usually they say to me, and what's it got to do with you? And I'd say, well, I'm interested. And many times young people have said to me, well, you're the first person that's asked me. And I think that is really, really key. So we really do need to be clear that we are asking these young people. That's anybody over the age of 12 is quite capable and younger of putting their input and their say into any assessment or any plan going forward for them. There is outlined the parent's role, the school attendance officer, the class teacher or the tutor, the designated safeguarding lead, senior leadership member, who of course is going to be key because from September every school has to have a senior leader who is responsible for attendance. So that will be a two-way thing. The local authority has a SPOC for the school, but the school has a SPOC for the local authority. The social worker and early help practitioner, every school in our area also has an early help professional contact with the early help service that can provide universal services or more targeted services. Adam, I think they're saying, can we zoom in a bit to this slide because they're struggling?
We'll try, but if we can't, we're sharing a copy so people can see it shortly themselves anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry,
okay,
Jane.
thank you. So every school has an EWO. They also have an early help professional who can advise on universal services and more targeted services under the early help banner. And then there's a bit about the Bedford Borough Education Welfare Service. I will come on to what we do a bit later. So can we go to the next slide, Adam, please? Thank you. Here we have a very an analysis that everybody will have seen of the levels of school attendance. And this is basically the red one is below 85%. And then we're going down to things that attendance issues, things in meetings that sometimes we don't understand. If there's an early help professional in a meeting and the EWO can't make it, there's a whistle-stop tour of what a managed move is, what home education is, and who to contact in our local authority if you are concerned that these things are being mentioned and the parent is sat there looking like she hasn't had or he hasn't had any conversation with anybody about anything like that. Part-time timetables are mentioned there, punctuality, all that kind of thing. Engagement from the parent and the child. Key messages. My key message is always, if you wouldn't have an unpaid day off work, you don't let your child have a day off school. So that to me is what we do. It really does emphasize the fact that school is key learning for life, and I think that is a message that I find is really useful to get over to people. There's a list of people who can help in the local authority. I haven't included phone numbers there because I would rather they went to either their early help professional or their EWO, because we've got school nursing service that's done on geographics, that kind of thing. So we can put people in contact with the right person for the right area within Bedford, even though we are quite a small unitary authority. Right, okay, next slide, Adam. This is a bit of a whistle-stop tour. This is our new flow chart from September. This reflects the new way of working. So what brown mucky bit is what the school are doing in conjunction with early help and with advice from the Education Welfare Service. The green side is all our legal bit. It goes on to a size page A4, and it's in our toolkit, which we will come on to in a minute. So in a school, we would expect the regular review of registers, the targeted support meeting, the strategic look at attendance, the analysis of the data, and those students on an individual basis that cause concern. If it's a primary school, I would expect the parents to be informed. If it's a secondary school, I would be expecting the young person to be spoken to by their tutor and also the parent to be informed. If there's no improvement, we go to level 2. We used to call this an attendance panel meeting, but we're back to the good old-fashioned parent contract meeting. In our parent contract meeting form, the agenda, 2/3 of it is greyed out. So if you get any ticks in that agenda area, we are already saying you need to be considering an early help assessment with looking for additional support for the family. It's at that level 2 point that I would be expecting the school to be offering. I'm really clear, expecting the offer. Early help is voluntary, as we all know, but somebody can't engage if it's not offered. So that would be the first time I would be looking at it being offered in our process. Then it would come to our allocations meeting, the relevant support put in place and reviewed at a team around the family meeting. Now, whether that's 3 or 6 weeks depends on circumstances in the case. At that team around the family meeting, I would expect attendance targets to be put in place. If they're met, then you go back to the continual monitoring. If they're not met, engagement is poor, support isn't working, or it's not being engaged in properly, then we go back to level 3. And at level 3, that's when the legal process starts. And we would be looking at a pre-court meeting at offering an early help assessment and really targeted support again. This would be held in conjunction with the school and anybody that's already working with the families. Currently, we are running these alongside child in need meetings, even core group meetings for children on child protection plans. And then I'm not going to sit here and teach everybody to suck eggs, because I know you all know the legal process and it's very clear in the slides. But at each point, we would be looking, have we met for a penalty notice warning for attendance? Because we do find that the warning is quite effective, especially in the early stages. You've got 3 weeks without an authorised absence to attend school and you won't be issued with a notice. So we do find that's quite effective. And of course, the consideration to an education supervision order can be done at any of these meetings, at any of these stages, and in supervision with the education welfare officers.
Sorry to interrupt again, but we're short on time, so a couple of minutes on the last slide. Is that all right?
Yep, fine. Now, this is our toolkit. The attendance toolkit we developed back in 2015, and I refer to it as our Bible. Everything in here that I would expect a school to use as ways of improving attendance. There's some example letters, our child missing education procedures, child performance, child licensing, punctuality. That lovely diagram we've just talked through about support and communication. We have an attendance audit in there that schools can go through. We hold their hands through a lot of this, and certainly with new officers we can do. Could you just flick to the next slide, Adam, please? Thank you. Oh, back, no, that's it. In here, I'm very clear that if you're new to the role, contact us. Everything is in there is really, really clear, and of what they need, examples, and going forward, how to contact, how to refer, all that kind of thing, the links for safeguarding, everything is in there. And it's been invaluable for our attendance officers. And I always say to them, if nothing else, when you think Ofsted's coming, at least download our child missing education procedures, which I think is page 43 onwards. It's nice and purple and they can see it on the notice board and in your office, and then they'll know you're doing your off-rolling when a child leaves appropriately, and you're chasing up if you don't know where a child has gone and that they could be missing education. The last slide, Adam, and I'll be really quick. Please. It's the one with the triangle on it. There we are. This working together, this is where from September is going to be a little bit of a challenge, because education welfare, the virtual school, who also has a role in this on monitoring any child that has a social worker, and our SEN department are going to have to be communication and a little more joined up, which is a work in progress for us. Since 2020 in the pandemic, we were all sat in a very close area in the office, but now we're all not in the office very often, at home or working remotely. It's not as easy as just going to sit on somebody's desk and have a chat. So this is kind of, we've got to revisit this triangle and rebuild those sides to make sure that we are, when we have a child, and I should have put a little child in the centre of that triangle, that we're all talking together. But I think this will be something that we will be able to build on over the summer, and that's my kind of to-do for the summer really is to revamp our toolkit and to visit this triangle and make sure that the child is at the centre of it. That's a whistle-stop tour of how we work in Bedford, but I think it's for me, it's about always the child is at the centre. We've had just to say something today, a name came across an email today from a housing officer. Jane, do you know anything about this? No, I didn't. But I had heard that another part of early help were going out to do an urgent visit with a social worker. So I just rang the social worker and said, is this anything to do with you? Yes. So we just made the communication link really quickly. I didn't need to be involved again. But now the housing officer is in contact with the right social worker, talking to them about her concerns, which are absolutely cementing the concerns that came in to our integrated front door yesterday. And so hopefully those children will get the right support going forward. So
thank you very much, Jane. We'll move very swiftly on to Bristol and over to Leslie and Vanessa.
Hi everybody, it's really wonderful to be here today. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Vanessa Davies, the Education Welfare Service Lead with Bristol City Council, and I lead the team of Education Welfare Officers. We've got a 5.2 FTE equivalent Education Welfare Officers. There's myself and my senior, and we've got 3 business support officers as well. But I'm welcoming my colleague here today as well, joining me, because we do a lot of co-creations together and co-delivering. So it's essential that my colleague Leslie joins in today. So Leslie.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, we're very much the ant and deck of the attendance world. So good to see everyone this afternoon. My role is I'm the attendance strategy manager. So I look at a lot of the systemic issues that create barriers to learning. So that includes within the local authority, but also reaching out to schools. So I'm conscious of time. So I just want to give you an idea of some of the work we're doing in Bristol. On the screen there, you'll see our communication activity grid. And really, this is to highlight that we're doing communication with schools on a daily basis, weekly, fortnightly, and going through to termly 3 times a year and annually. And these will take different forms. We'll be talking about these very briefly today, so just to give you an idea about them. But some of these will also refer to internal meetings within the local authority, but trying to bring teams together. And the previous presentation highlighted that importance. And one of our key ones is our fortnightly attendance and belonging task group that really brings everyone together to help support this whole communication process. Go on to the next slide, please.
Okay, on screen now you've got our communication summary document, and it has really been really helpful generating this document to provide an overview and allow us to reflect on any gaps in communication. But what the document has always also done is bring together that overview for our stakeholders, our schools, so that they can know what to expect from us and when to expect it. And really that's been the whole focus of our kind of communication approach with schools. It's to really drill down on that consistency of practice, upskilling the workforce, and really focusing on helping schools to help themselves. Next slide, please.
So this is just to give you a very brief idea of the sort of timeline of activity that we're doing. We will touch upon these in a little bit more detail as we go through the presentation, but this is to recognise that there is attendance activity that is done throughout the whole academic year, and the basis of this is that we will do briefings in September, and this will feed all the way through. This is in addition to that weekly and daily contact, and also our CPD offer and training offer would be on top of this as well. But it's just really to say that we try to keep that momentum going throughout the academic year to make sure it's on everyone's agenda. That includes colleagues within school, but also partner agencies and other colleagues within the local authority. Okay, next slide. Oh, so this is our version of the attendance toolkit. I know our colleague earlier mentioned their version. We've put ours on SharePoint, and so this is something that we have provided to professionals involved in supporting attendance. So not only school leads, but also within our local authority and partner agencies. It allows us to bring this up to date all the time. We're probably adding to it at least once a week, if not throughout the week. It has upcoming events listed on there, including training, but also, as you'll see on the second half of the screen, so when you have these slides, you'll be able to see it in a little bit more detail. There are a number of tabs, and we use that to put into their up-to-date information, whether that be guidance, advice, quick guides, whether that's research. So it's continually accessed, and as I say, we use SharePoint so that we can make sure that we have management of that, but it's easy for us to edit as well. We found some website we had before was too difficult to keep up to date, but this is our solution to that.
Okay, our attendance mailing list and our key contact list is something that we actively keep updated and on top of. So we found the best way to achieve that was by embedding a sign up to our mail list option in our signature strips. So when schools have got a turnover of staff, they can regularly update their contacts readily via the signature strip, and our mail list has been really essential way to efficiently and expediently message out and cascade information to core attendance contacts in school. We are currently undertaking a survey to reach out to our school senior leaders to really ascertain who they are, who are taking oversight of attendance in their settings, and that will synchronise with the new guidance as well. Okay, next slide, please.
So this is just a couple of examples of our quick guides. This was upon a request from a head teacher. What we do is we try to summarise some key guidance and request areas that we put into usually a 1 to 2 page summary. We try to use graphics as well to make it a little bit more engaging. And so what we will do is we will produce these with the idea that you can either use them online, but also print them out, stick them on your notice board. You'll see that there's a list of the ones that we've done so far, and we're always adding to these. The one at the bottom regarding COVID-19 arrangements, these were produced jointly with our colleagues in public health. They have been so successful now that our SEND team have organised this, and they're also using the same SharePoint as their approach to make sure they're reaching out to their SEND colleagues in schools as well. So we're sharing practice that way within our own local authority. Okay.
Oh, I think we might have a slide missing. So can we go back one? Oh, no? Okay. So we do have a set of briefing notes as well, and our briefing notes provide a deeper dive into slightly more complex issues that might not lend themselves to our quick guide format, and some topics will be replicated in quick guide format and deeper dive into our briefing notes. So the slide that you've got on screen now talks about our school attendance network meetings, and we have had those in place for a number of years, and they used to be face-to-face sessions held 3 times a year. We now hold them virtually, but still the same frequency 3 times a year, and we found our school attendance network meetings a really vital way of networking with our partners in settings, keeping them up to date with key pieces of information, ways to disseminate training and provide question and answer sessions as well. So they have proved really vital, and we've got a new offer being made available to schools as well. So Leslie, our locality meetings.
Yeah, so we've just set up a pilot this academic year, and we hope to set these up from term 6 this year going forward. We've got 3 key localities in Bristol that we use, and what we want to do is you work with our schools and settings to co-chair locality meetings. We will do separate ones for primary, secondary, but also a separate one for ALP, our specialist settings, but also our independent settings as well. And these will help understand what the barriers are to attendance at a more locality level. So they're being set up now. We were doing this in advance of the guidance, but it very much mirrors what's expected in the guidance as well. Okay.
Okay, one of the things that we offer on a routinely regular basis are our weekly attendance drop-in sessions. So this is a virtual drop-in session held each week on a Tuesday during term time, where myself and Leslie are usually available to field questions and queries from school-related staff or other professionals with responsibilities for attendance. So we make ourselves available for that hour session, and people can come with questions and queries, and we do that in a kind of anonymous way, so that families or school settings can't be readily identified, but we do provide signposting advice. We also have our Education Welfare Service helpline, which is staffed by the wider team of education welfare officers on a rota basis, and that is available for schools to call in or between Monday to Friday. We've got an email box as well that we manage in the same way, and that contact is public facing. So we do get school traffic, but also parents and carers can reach us through those means as well. Next slide, please.
We've already covered this, but this is just basically for those subjects that are in detail, that require greater detail than a quick guide. We do actually issue out briefing notes, which are also on our attendance toolkit. So if we pop onto the next slide, please. One of the things we've learned from our work in during COVID was the fact that the September briefings that we did for COVID have actually proved really useful. So this year we're looking to set the scene by ensuring that we have a series of 3 meetings in September to really set the scene for all of our colleagues around our expectations around attendance. We found these really useful to sort of set the scene, and we endeavour to do them again this year, and we'll carry them forward as we go through. Okay, this is my Sunday night evening homework, which is the weekly attendance update. So this is what, it's like a newsletter, but what I try to draw upon is attendance related information, information from other teams, research and other training events that are available. And what we do is distribute that to head teachers, inclusion leads, and anyone who's on the attendance mailing list, which could include colleagues both within the local authority and beyond. So it has a wide reach, and we know from our research that it is actually well read. So that's something that has been really helpful moving forward. And again, dotted around with lots of pictures.
Okay, we've got a couple of slides out of order. So yeah, this was going to be our summing up slide. So I'm not quite sure whether we've got a couple more slides. Yeah. Maybe if we could push forward. Yeah, okay, that's lovely. So our attendance CPD offer for schools, we have been offering schools a CPD offer for a number of years now. Some of those sessions are free, so we make them readily available free of charge. Some of the sessions are chargeable for schools, and we do make sure that those sessions are offered at regular intervals throughout the academic year, so that there's good availability for school partners to book on. Okay, next slide. Capturing feedback, we found, is a really vital part of the work that we do, so that we know that we've got the right offer available for our schools, and it acts as a temperature check to make sure that we are covering what is actually needed for them. So we have regular opportunities to capture feedback through either the individual course feedback or via our school attendance network meetings, our drop-in sessions, and then our more formal feedback surveys that we operate at regular intervals. So we've got one that we've got on open at the moment on CPD, and we've got another one on our mail list. So yeah, we do ensure that we work in collaboration with our partners, and they participate in that co-creation of the work that we do and the documents that we've got to support. Okay, so in summary, really, our whole focus around our communication strategy has been built on different layers and different methods of communication so that we can try and get the reach and the coverage. And we've got a variety of frequencies that we offer those different modes of communication as well. Our whole strategy is quite reliant on key individuals and the key individual skill sets which they bring to the offer. And we have found that it's been really important to pitch our communication strategy on the fundamentals about why is improving attendance crucially important. So those links to attainment, safeguarding, wellbeing and equalities and pupil entitlement. And the enhancements that we will do to our offer will continue. We will look to further enhance what we already do, particularly in line with the challenges and the opportunities that the new guidance has provided. So we will be looking at those opportunities to revise and look at delivering new and different ways in which we communicate and engage and connect with our partners in schools.
And just one thing I just want to really add, this is an offer. Most of what you've seen today is offered to all of our schools and settings, not just those that are maintained or where there's a traded service. So what we really want to do is work with schools to help themselves in partnership. So we are looking forward to working around the guidance moving forward.
Thank you very much both, and which is very much the ethos of the guidance. And I can't stress enough that as we've discovered over these last couple of sessions, it isn't about the local authorities taking on additional work on top of what you're already doing. It's most of what many of you are already doing is being transferred to schools in responsibility, and the new role for the local authority is being much more strategic in terms of how you approach this question of attendance. So I hope you've taken some great inspiration from these two examples of very small local authorities with small numbers of members of staff, but huge challenges in attendance, and just what can be achieved about thinking, as Leslie says, about where you can add things above and beyond what schools can do themselves, and how you can facilitate for schools to do much of the work that we just don't have the resource to do at local authority level.